All right, well, it is 2:30, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to this afternoon's program, Boosting the Immune System. We're joined by Melissa Cotton with the University of Missouri Extension for our program this afternoon. I did have a couple of housekeeping items to go over. We are recording today's program. So we are going to ask you to stay muted and type any questions in the chat, and we'll save time at the end to go over those questions. I will send out the link with the recording once it is available on the MCPL YouTube channel. I did email out a handout from Melissa. It should be in your email from blecky@mymcpl.org. I'll send it out again following the program with the link to today's survey. I've also dropped the link to the survey in the chat. So if you can take a few minutes at the end of the program to fill that out and let us know how we did, that helps us to continue to get funding for programs like these. And if you have any suggestions for topics you'd like to see programs about, we always want to see those as well. That's how we get some of our best ideas. I do also want to mention a couple of upcoming programs that we have. So I'm going to share my screen here. The first one we have at several locations throughout the system in January, along with virtually on January 13th at 6. Becky Ray is back. This program is the Villisca Axe Murderers of 1912. Unsolved and Haunted. She'll be talking about the history of these infamous murders and also the ghosts who remain in the house. So that should be a fun program. The second program I want to mention, January 16th at 7 on Zoom. Gene Flynn is going to be back for another armchair travel program. And this time he's going to be taking us to Lyon, France, the culinary capital, and be exploring food, fashion, history, and entertainment there. That one, you do need to register to receive the Zoom link. On January 23rd at 7, we have another hybrid program, Composting 101, Turning Waste into Garden Gold. Miriam Tata will be showing us how we can take food waste and turn it into compost rather than sending it to the landfill. And she'll discuss what to compost, different composting methods, and the benefits for using compost in your garden. That one is at our South Independence branch if you'd like to attend in person as well as on Zoom. If you do want to attend online, you do need to register to receive that Zoom link. And then on January 26th at 2 p.m. at our Woodneath Auditorium, we are having a special performance of flamenco music and dance from Mexico and Cuba. So this group, 45 Flamenco, will be sharing songs and dance as well as some of the culture and history associated with the art of flamenco. And that is at 2 p.m. That one is in person only. And finally, January 28th at 7 here on Zoom, we have The Day the Music Died. February 3rd, 1959, the careers of Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, and J.P. Big Bopper Richardson came to a tragic end when the charter plane carrying them crashed. Richard Knox will be examining the careers and lives of these artists and address some of the questions around their deaths. That one is also on Zoom. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here so that Melissa can share hers, and I'll let her get started with today's program.
Got to unmute and make sure all my screens are ready to go here. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Cotton. I am a field specialist in nutrition and health education for the University of Missouri Extension. And I am very excited to be here with you today to talk about boosting the immune system. And I'm sorry, I'm having trouble progressing my slides. Here we go. There we go. Just a little bit about the University of Missouri Extension, in case you've never heard of us. We are part of the land grant mission. So as an employee, it's my job to take research that typically happens on a college campus and carry it to all people of Missouri. And I specifically do that in the health and wellness realm. So I teach cooking classes, strength training, and other exercise classes, food preservation, things like that, and like what we're talking about today. But I have colleagues who do that in the agriculture area, horticulture, youth development, human development, et cetera. And we have offices in all of the counties of Missouri, and just wanted to let you know that we are a resource in your community. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and jump into our topic, boosting the immune system. It's very timely. Often this time of year, we're thinking about how to prevent getting sick. Usually with the cold weather, that's a little bit more in the front of our mind. And because we tend to gather in large groups, maybe over the holidays, you spent time with your family and things like that. Often germs can spread. And so this can be a time of year where we're all kind of thinking about our immune system and trying to get it to work at its best. So throughout our presentation today, we are going to focus on 5 key natural ways that you can support your body's immune system and your health. And the information that I provide here isn't a foolproof treatment plan or prevention for any type of illness, whether that be acute or chronic, but it's really meant to provide research-based information on just little simple things that you can do to support your health and your immune system. Now, before we get into those lifestyle habits, I want to kind of talk a little bit about your immune system in general, kind of what's going on at a cellular level, so that as we move into those lifestyle habits, you can understand a little bit better about why they're effective and what they're doing for our bodies. So as you see on the screen, if you can see this here, it talks about the 2 different parts of our immune system. So our immune system is made up of the innate immune system and the acquired immune system. The innate immune system is also called the non-specific immune system. And this part of our immune system only recognizes what is me and not me. That's its job, or what is you and what is not you. So its job is to notice anything that's foreign entering the body and working to get rid of it. Okay, and it does this in a couple of ways. We have 2 lines of defense. The first line of defense, so you see here we have the innate immune system. If you look up, it says the first line of defense. This is to prevent any foreign objects from entering our body, and more importantly, our bloodstream. And so our first line of defense is made up of our skin. So it's that barrier. It keeps a lot of stuff out. It keeps a lot of stuff in. It's a very important part of this section of our immune system, as well as the mucous membranes in our nose, in our throat, in our ears, and even the acidity in our stomach plays a vital role as well. Many microorganisms cannot survive that acidic environment, so it helps us to kill off certain bacteria. The second line of defense includes non-specific white blood cells. And the reason I say non-specific is because no matter what type of pathogen our body is dealing with at a given time, it's going to send the same type of cell to attack it and hopefully kill it off. And when these white blood cells are released by our immune system, often this is accompanied by inflammation. So inflammation is really a protective measure or process of the body, and blood sort of pools in that area. It helps kind of get rid of the damaged or dead cells and replenishes it with new cells. But when we experience inflammation, you probably know from experience yourself, that's accompanied by swelling and redness, heat, pain, tightness in that area. And a little bit is good, but when we have inflammation that's ongoing or chronic, we can start to see some negative consequences, which we'll get into a little bit later in today's presentation. But that is often what's going on when we're looking at the innate immune system. The other part is the acquired immune system. This is referred to as the specific immune system. And this part of our immune system, we are building up throughout our lifetime. So when we're born all the way to the age we are today, our immune system is developing, it's learning from past experiences. So I always think of like kids playing in the dirt, and people will say, it's good for their immune system. And truly it is, because there's a lot of microorganisms in the dirt and soil. And the more we come into contact with different types of bacteria, microorganisms, viruses, our body learns how to handle those the next time we come into contact with them. And so this is acquired or built up over time. And then this part of the immune system, it's called the specific immune system. As I mentioned earlier, the other type, the innate immune system, it's whatever pathogen we're dealing, it's just sending white blood cells. The attack always looks the same. But on this side of things, we're a little bit more strategic and more specific. So depending on the pathogen that we're dealing with today, our body's going to kind of release different types of cells based on its past experience. It knows how to handle that pathogen better. So it's a little bit more strategic on this end. And so this part of our immune system creates B cells and T cells. B cells, and I'll show you here on this next slide, they make antibodies that attack the foreign objects, and T cells, which are often also referred to as killer T cells sometimes. These are all about attack. Okay, so in my mind, this is what I'm imagining when I talk about this is, the T cells are the fighter cells, and they're calling up their friends and they're saying, "Hey, we're under attack right now. We need to call in the troops. Bring all your friends. We're going to attack this pathogen and get rid of them." And really, they sort of surround the pathogen or bacteria and try to kill it off. So this is what's sort of happening on a cellular level. It's probably more information than you cared to know, but as we learn and go forward today in those key lifestyle habits about boosting our immunity, we'll kind of refer back to those B cells, T cells, white blood cells. And so that'll make a little bit more sense. So from here on, we're going to focus on some key habits or lifestyle choices that we can make to help boost our immunity and our health. The first one, if you start at the top, is eating well for balanced nutrition. We have to feed our bodies well in order for our body to function at its best level. We also really need good quality sleep. And this is certainly easier said than done. Unfortunately, as we get older, it is more difficult to get quality sleep. So sometimes it's not a lack of wanting to get quality sleep, but just a struggle. So hopefully I'll be able to provide some tips to help improve that area of your life if you do struggle there. But sleep is a time where we recover, we restore. And so during this period, it's just really important for our immune system. And we'll talk more about that later. Number three is reducing stress. Our mental health is highly connected to our physical health. And so a key part of good health is being able to cope with life stressors. Number four, this won't apply to everyone, but it is extremely important and worth mentioning is quitting smoking or vaping, or of course not starting those things. Those have very negative implications on our health and particularly our immune system. And then number five, which is probably my favorite of what we're going to cover today, is exercising regularly. A lot of times when it comes to health, people are looking for a magic bullet or sort of the easiest way out. There is no such thing as a magic bullet. Exercise is probably the closest you can get because it provides our bodies with so many benefits. And we'll talk more about that later on today. So let's go ahead and dig in. We're going to get a little deeper on that first strategy, which is eating well, and we're going to spend a lot of time here. Just there's a lot to say with how we eat and how that's going to affect our immune system. So as a nutrition specialist, when I think about eating well, I can't help but think of my plate. So if you can see the picture here on the screen, this is my plate. You may have seen that on a back of a cereal box or all kinds of places, but it's just one simple strategy for eating a balanced diet where you don't necessarily have to track macros or calories or things like that. It's a visual thing. And so if you are someone who eats about 3 meals, maybe 2 snacks a day, what you would want is at mealtime, you really want your plate to be about half fruits and vegetables. And of course, a lot of foods, all of these things are mixed together. If you think of a casserole, your vegetables, grains, protein, and maybe dairy are all mixed into one, and that's okay. But if you look at what you're eating and you think is about half of this fruits or vegetables, and if it is, that's awesome. If it's not, well, maybe you can take some steps to move more towards that. I know I did not grow up with meals looking quite like this. Like vegetables was a small section. I don't ever remember eating fruit at supper. Maybe it was part of lunch. So my plate didn't look like this. This is something that I have to work towards too. But we really want a lot of fruits and vegetables because of the fiber and the density of vitamins and minerals that our bodies need. We need whole grains, lean protein, low fat dairy. So, this is just kind of a simple way to help you move towards a more balanced diet. But it's just one strategy of many out there. So, when we are thinking about immune health specifically, there are some vitamins and nutrients that sort of rise to the top and can really help us improve that area of our health. And so, today we're going to focus on the 5 nutrients here on the screen. As I talked earlier, I mentioned the immune system works to fight off pathogens. And when it does that, it creates inflammation. And inflammation isn't necessarily bad, but too much for too long, when we're looking more at like chronic inflammation, what can happen is we can start to see cell damage, especially in key organs of the body. So, in order to combat that, we want to eat a diet that's high in antioxidant rich foods. And vitamin C is an antioxidant. And research shows that when people consume vitamin C while they have a cold, they can decrease the length of their cold. There's also studies who've looked at athletes specifically and giving them vitamin C to prevent catching a cold or respiratory illness, and it has been shown to be effective. So, we want to get about 400 milligrams of vitamin C a day, and we can do that by eating foods that are high in that nutrient. So things like bell peppers are very high in vitamin C, strawberries, kiwi, broccoli. And I noticed just now that I don't have citrus, which is probably the thing that comes to mind first, but maybe these others are things that you don't think about as much as being high in vitamin C. The immune system, like other body systems, is always producing those new cells to maintain proper function. So I talked to you earlier about the white blood cells, the B cells, the T cells, all of those things. And it takes nutrients to help our bodies keep creating those cells that are going and attacking the bacteria that are going to make us sick. And so, some key vitamins and minerals that are involved in this cell production are vitamin D, vitamin A, and zinc. And some studies have been done that show people who regularly consume vitamin D specifically through supplements have a decreased risk of acute respiratory illness like the flu. So vitamin D, one of the biggest sources for vitamin D is sunlight. Now, we don't get the vitamin D from the sun. The sunlight helps our bodies to make it in-house. And we live in Missouri or maybe Kansas, the Midwest, and it's winter, so it is very hard this time of year to get enough vitamin D. Now, you can supplement for this. Next time you go to the doctor, you might, if you're not already doing that, you might talk to them and just ask, is this something that I might need to supplement for? You always want to talk to your doctor before adding things in, or always let them know what you're taking. But beyond sunlight, we can also get vitamin D from things like eggs, mushrooms, fatty fish, and fortified dairy. Vitamin A, good sources would be sweet potatoes, cantaloupe, spinach, and then zinc. Some good sources are beef, oysters, and yogurt. Our last nutrient on the list isn't necessarily a vitamin or mineral, but just like vitamin C, has antioxidant or anti-inflammatory properties, and so it can be really helpful in kind of mitigating that inflammation in the body. And we can get good sources of omega-3s from fatty fish, flaxseed, and chia seeds. So continuing on with this conversation about what we eat, it's important to talk about gut health. Our gut and our immune system are very connected. Nearly 75% of our immune system cells actually line the GI tract, and that connectedness, we're still learning about that, understanding how it works and what's going on there. But we do know for sure a couple of things. And one of those is that in our gut, we have a huge variety of bacteria or microorganisms. And that sounds kind of gross, maybe, but it's actually a really good thing. It's very important. We want to have lots of different kinds, lots of different strains. This keeps us healthy. And within that different bacteria, we have good bacteria and bad bacteria. And the hope is that that good outweighs the bad. And that good bacteria is really keeping us healthy. For one thing, it adds to the acidic environment that we tend to think about in the stomach. And we want it to be acidic because some of the bad bacteria cannot survive that acidic environment. And so it helps keep us healthy and prevents us from getting ill. And so we really want that to happen. So we want a lot of good bacteria in our gut. Also, we do know that certain diseases like inflammatory bowel disease and irritable bowel syndrome, there is something kind of off with that interconnectedness or that conversation that's happening between our gut and our immunity. So we know when that communication is off, that we can have a lot of symptoms that are maybe undesirable. So to to improve our gut health, if we work towards that, we are going to improve our immunity. So, what can we do to support gut health? Well, we can consume more prebiotics and probiotics. Okay. Let's start with probiotics. Probiotics are live bacteria or live microorganisms that we can get in certain foods. Foods that are fermented contain these live bacteria, and they are good bacteria. So we want to consume those. But just consuming the probiotics alone may not do the trick. We need to make an environment for those probiotics to thrive and flourish. And we do that by eating more prebiotics. So prebiotics are foods that are high in fiber and typically are plant-based. So think of your fruits, your vegetables, and your whole grains. And there's sort of an analogy, if you will, if there are any gardeners in the room, you can think about if I say I wanted to go grow some lettuce, I could go out and just throw some seeds in the dirt, right? And they might grow. They might, but I'm probably going to be way more successful if I plant those seeds according to the directions for that vegetable, if I have nutrients in my soil, if I have adequate sunlight and water. So those nutrients, the soil, the water, that's like the prebiotics that help those probiotics grow. Now, just like in the garden, we also have things that are um, going to make it difficult for the lettuce to grow. Things like we could have too many weeds and they could steal all the nutrients and the sunlight and make it so our lettuce doesn't grow. Well, similarly, in our bodies, there are certain things that can cause trouble. If we are eating a diet that's really high in meat and animal byproducts like eggs and cheese, but we're not balancing that out with foods that are high in fiber, we're going to have this imbalance in our gut. We don't have that fiber to help the bacteria grow, and this could lead to not having as healthy of a gut. Other things that tend to damage our gut health are alcohol, artificial sweeteners, and antibiotics. Now, I'm not telling you not to take the antibiotics that your doctor prescribes. follow what your doctor says. It's just that when an antibiotic's job is to kill off the bad bacteria that's making you sick, and one side effect is that it's going to kill some good bacteria too. And that's why sometimes when we are prescribed those medications, the doctor or the pharmacist may say, you know, you might take this with some yogurt. Because yogurt is a probiotic. It contains live and active cultures, so it can help to restore the balance in our gut. Okay, on to the next slide, just to continue on with this thought. Okay, I hear that probiotics are good for me. What foods can I eat to get more probiotics in my diet? So remember, we want fermented foods. And so here's a list. The second bullet is yogurt. That's the one that I have always been most familiar with and tend to consume the most because for one, it's affordable for my budget and it's easy to access at the stores that I shop at. So yogurt is a great one for me. Other sources are listed here on the screen. I'm going to go through them and kind of explain quickly what they are. Kimchi is a traditional Korean side dish of salted fermented vegetables. Kombucha is a tangy, fizzy, it's fermented tea, and generally you find it in the produce section in a glass bottle. Next time you're there, you can look and check that out. Sauerkraut sometimes does. So if you go to the grocery store and you're looking on those inner aisles and you buy your sauerkraut at room temperature, more than likely it does not have probiotics. You would want to find sauerkraut that is chilled and you'll want to read your label and make sure that it says something like live and active cultures because sauerkraut and pickles, there's more than one way to get those or make those. In one process, you would ferment those items, and you can also put it in. You can also do it another way that doesn't result in probiotics. So with pickles and sauerkraut, you might have to look around at your grocery store, or different stores to find the ones that contain probiotics. Just wanted to note that. Then we have miso. This is an intensely flavored paste made from fermented barley, rice, or soybeans. And it's usually turned into a salty soup. So if you've been to like a hibachi restaurant, often they serve this as an appetizer. It's very good. Tempeh is made from fermented soybeans and it's got a very dense cake-like texture, similar somewhat to oh, what's the word? Tofu, kind of is what it reminds me of. Then we have kefir or kefir. I pronounce it both ways, and you'll hear both of those pronunciations. But it's almost reminds me of drinking like a liquid Greek yogurt. It's very tangy, especially if you get the plain version, and you usually find it in the milk or dairy section. This is another common one that I see at most grocery stores. Typically, I see three kinds. I see a plain kind, a blueberry, and a strawberry. I would caution you when it comes to kefir, when it comes to kombucha, and even yogurt. Read your labels because some of those varieties, particularly the flavored ones, come with a lot of added sugar. Too much sugar is harmful to our gut. And so we don't want to accidentally start consuming too much sugar because we're trying to do a good thing of getting more probiotics. So just read your labels because there are plenty of options out there that don't have as much added sugar or not very much at all. Then I talked about pickles, and then I will say mostly outside of the US, there some cheeses contain probiotics. We have a regulation of after the cheese is aged to put it through a heating process. It's pasteurized, where other countries don't necessarily have those same regulations. So most cheeses you're going to find in the US will not contain that, but if you're traveling, you might be able to find some. So how often should you eat these fermented foods? There's really no recommendation to give. Every person's different, but just making them part of a balanced diet can show some improvements for some people. Outside of food sources, you can supplement probiotics as well. And like I mentioned earlier, anytime you're going to add a supplement or start taking something different, it's always a good idea to talk to your doctor and just let them know everything that you're taking, including over-the-counter supplements and medications. If you do decide that this is something you want to supplement, there are some things to look for on the labels to make sure you're getting what you think you're getting and your money is well spent. So, one thing is that we want the product to list the full probiotic name. So that usually includes the genus, species, and the strain. So we want like three names. The more specific it is, typically the better. We should also be able to see how much probiotic we are getting per serving. And probiotics are measured in colony forming units or CFUs. And typically, you want to see something like 1.2 billion, 20 billion. You typically, the more, the better, up to a certain point. Once you get into like the trillions, you're probably spending a lot more money, but not necessarily getting a lot more benefit. So just it is going to be a big number, but the reason for this is your body's not going to latch on to all of those probiotics. A lot of them are going to get flushed out, but the more that are there, the more likely some are going to catch on and be able to grow and flourish. And then finally, research supporting the product is really helpful. Looking for seals of approval. So you can see some examples on the screen, things like Consumer Lab, NSF, USP. Um, so those are third party third party researchers or labs have taken that product and they've tested it to make sure that you, the consumer, are getting what the package is saying that you're getting. So those help to add validity to your purchase. Okay, so that was probiotics. What about prebiotics? How do we feed these probiotics and help them to flourish and improve our gut health? So, again, those are high fiber, plant-based foods. So, just eating more fruits and vegetables in general, especially with the skin on, is going to be a really great way to do that. Cooking with more garlic and onions, and that sounds awesome. I love garlic and onions. So, adding that to scrambled eggs or a casserole or your pasta, choosing whole grains over enriched grains, so that whole grain bread or pasta, brown rice, oatmeal, instead of white bread, white pasta, because whole grains have more fiber. Cereals with 5 or more grams of fiber, maybe make that a goal. Like, oh, I'm not won't buy it unless it has at least 5 grams of fiber. You could also sprinkle bran in your cereal or oatmeal over your food. It's kind of like a not you're not going to have a lot of flavor from that bran. I'd start with a little and see if you like it before you put too much, but it's going to be a kind of an easy way to add some fiber to your meals. And then things like peas and beans have a lot of fiber, and you can add those to all sorts of things. Okay. So that kind of ends strategy one, which is eating well for a balanced diet. Okay, we spent a lot of time there. I told you we would, but there's a lot to talk about in that area. Next, we're going to move on to getting quality sleep. And again, I know this is easier said than done, but there are some ways and things that we can do to set ourselves up, which we'll actually talk about on the next slide. But before we do, I want to explain a little bit more about why sleep is so beneficial and how it impacts our immune system. So, getting good sleep helps our body make something called cytokines. These are special proteins made by white blood cells, and they help our body to make more immune cells. Remember, we need those immune cells because as microorganisms enter our body, those white blood cells are and immune cells are going to go and attack and make sure that we don't get sick or do their best to do so. So they also help to create those killer T cells, those specific cells who know, oh, I've seen this pathogen before. I know what I did last time to handle it. And so we need our sleep to be able to make enough immune cells to be able to keep our body healthy. Sleep also helps decrease things like anxiety, depression, and stress. And in a future strategy, we'll talk about how those tend to lower our immune system. Sort of as an added bonus, with quality sleep, you also see things like reduced pain and fatigue and improved cognitive function and memory. So, how can I set myself up to get good sleep? Well, we do a really good job of this with kids. We know kids need a bedtime routine, right? We're like, okay, we got to give them the bath. We're going to read books. We're going to, get the lights dimmer. But as we get older, we sort of start to resist the idea that we need a bedtime routine, right? We're adults. We don't need that. But we actually do. And I would guess that you have a routine of some kind, but whether or not that sets you up to sleep well is sort of the question. So I'll tell you, this is bad. I need to improve in this area myself because often, once I finally get all the kids to bed, I should go to sleep then, but then I want to get back up just to have a little like time for myself, right? And then I stay up too late watching a show or I'm scrolling on my phone right before I go to bed. That's not setting myself up for good sleep. What we want to do is to choose activities that relax us, okay, and that aren't screen related. That light from the screens and things like that really activates our brain and keeps us alert and awake. So, taking a bath or a shower is a really good way to help kind of calm you down, get you ready for bed. And then journaling or reading, or, if you have a hard time shutting off your brain, making a list of the things that you need to do the next day so that you know you won't forget, are other good options. Also, going to bed and waking up around the same time every day within an hour or so is really going to help you because what that does is we have this internal clock, our circadian rhythm, and that helps us to feel awake and tired at certain parts of the day. And it can get really out of whack if we're waking up way different times or going to sleep way different times. And so that will help you set your inner clock and set you up for success. Sleeping in a cool and dark room is another way that we tend to sleep better. Some people like noise, some people like quiet. Just setting your space up to really help you achieve this good sleep and limiting that technology use before bed as much as possible. Caffeine and alcohol can really interfere with good sleep. So, caffeine stays in our system like 6 to 8 hours. And some people are super sensitive to this and some aren't. But, if you're struggling, you might want to take a look at your caffeine consumption, first the amount, but also how late in the day are you consuming it. And remember, there are other things like chocolate contains caffeine if you are super sensitive. Alcohol is another thing. Alcohol tends to actually, it does sometimes help us to fall asleep faster. It makes us tired. It's a depressant, but it actually interferes with our restorative sleep, our REM sleep. Rapid eye movement is the time of our sleep where we get really in deep sleep, and that's very restorative for our body. Well, we can't get it to that part of our sleep cycle as well with alcohol consumption. So that's just something to think about as well. And then we want to, if we're having trouble sleeping, don't just lay in your bed. I mean, you have to lay for a little bit to give yourself a chance, right? But if you're just tossing and turning and have a terrible time, it's actually better to get up out of your bed because when your body starts to associate being in bed with not being able to sleep, it's kind of like this domino effect. Your body starts to expect that. So get up, go to another room, try to read or write or do something calming, and then when you're feeling tired, go back and try to lay down again. Now, sometimes what makes it so we can't sleep very well are all the thoughts in our head, all the stress in our life that's making it hard for us to calm down. And so that really helps us get to the strategy number three, which is reduce stress. Okay, this is a big one. This is something I find we're talking about more and more. And we're seeing how stress impacts our health in a number of ways in a really big way. So this is an important one. We do know that some stress, stress actually does keep us safe in a lot of ways, little bouts of it, right? So like if I had a tiger running towards me, it's going to be a little stressful, but that stress is going to help me quickly decide what I need to do, which will probably be run away as fast as I can or, whatever. Um, it also things like not quite so intense, but maybe I have something due at work. I have a deadline. That little bit of stress is going to help me push through and meet my deadline. Or if I have friends coming over for dinner, I might be a little stressed about getting the house cleaned in time, but it's not a big deal. It just helps me push through. When stress becomes ongoing and it or chronic and we're just so stressed a lot of the day, a lot of the time, this is where we start to see some negative consequences both to our short-term health but to our long-term health as well. Internally, when we are under stress, our body releases a hormone called cortisol, And this hormone, short term, can cause things like acne, hair loss, that sort of thing. Long term, we're looking at problems with blood pressure, more serious issues that can put us at increased risk for chronic conditions and poor health outcomes. We also see increased inflammation in the body. And I know I've mentioned inflammation several times today, but when we have more inflammation, we have more cell damage. We probably have more pain where it's harder to just get around in our daily life. And then finally, we also see lower levels of lymphocytes or those B and T cells, so our body doesn't have as many of those white blood cells ready to attack. That leaves our bodies open for more for infection, for illness, for being for those things getting in and sneaking in and making us sick a little bit easier than if we have all of those white blood cells ready to attack. So, how do we know when we're stressed? Basically, stress isn't going to go away, right? We're always going to have sources of stress in our life. Those sources are going to change. We're going to go through different phases and amounts. So, instead of trying to control what we can't control, we have to think about, okay, how can I manage this stress? How can I take breaks from it, and help my body combat it at its best. And the first step in doing that is being really aware of what it looks like and feels like for us as an individual when we're stressed. And so that kind of seems like, I don't know, pretty obvious, right? Like, but I'm not so sure. I would argue because I think that we're stressed so much of the time that we no longer notice the signs as much, okay? And so over the next week or two, I'd like you to get really curious. So as you go about your days, if you hit some stressful moments, I want you to really take note of what goes on in your body physically, like what that feels like, but also what are the thoughts going through your head? What are you saying to yourself? What are your habits like? So let me just give you an example for myself. I know when I am stressed, just like a little, like maybe I have a little anxiety about something or got something coming up. And you may have seen me earlier. My nose runs. It's such a weird thing. I have a runny nose when I'm a little bit stressed. When stress gets bigger, I feel a heaviness on my chest, like it's harder to get a breath in, right? And I feel sweaty. I tend to want to eat chocolate, like that's my go-to. Maybe even drink a glass of wine, Um, and I tend to kind of isolate myself and like don't want to see the outside world because of that stress. So I want you to think about, and if you feel like you want to kind of maybe put some of your examples in the chat, I'd love to hear what those are for you, because stress looks a little bit different for every person. Okay, it displays itself in different ways, but it's in our thoughts and our physically our body as well. So sometimes because those symptoms are so varied, it can be really vague, and we might not realize that we are stressed or we're just used to it. And the reason this is important is really captured on this next slide. Research shows that about 75 to 90% of all doctor's visits are due to stress related ailments. So basically, almost all doctor's visits are a result of stress. And that's really eye opening. I think that's a really powerful bit of research because we don't go to the doctor thinking, I'm really stressed out. I got to go see my doctor. No, I think instead we're going because, like, oh, I've had this cold for 3 weeks and I can't get over it. Or, gosh, I've had 5 migraines this month. Or, my digestive system is completely out of whack. I have got to go figure out, like, I can't, maybe I'm intolerant to some kind of food that I'm eating. That's sort of what we're going to the doctor for. We're not thinking back to, well, why am I having these symptoms? How much stress am I dealing with? And so I just think it's an important thing to realize and really think about in your own life. So that's a really downer slide. Let's take it to a more positive note and look at what can we control? What can we do to help manage stress? And when you're thinking about this, and probably ideas are already coming into your head of what you do. And I'd love, again, this is another thing if you feel like putting some of the ways that you manage stress in the chat, I think that's a great discussion that we could get started here. But really focus on habits that don't add to your stress down the road, but actually help manage it or alleviate it. So, for example, Sometimes when we're stressed, we do tend to drink more alcohol as a whole, as a population. And, one glass of wine or one beer every now and then, not necessarily a bad thing, right? But when that turns into one and two and three and four every night, that is definitely going to add to our stress over time. Maybe not the next day, but if that's continually a habit, we're going to start to not feel very good. We're probably going to gain weight. We're going to be frustrated with ourselves. And so we really want to focus on habits that help to actually manage that stress or lessen it possibly. So I know for myself, when I'm feeling stressed, just going for a walk or exercising is a really helpful way for me. I don't know if we have any in the chat. I can't see that at the moment, but feel free to throw those in there. And Beth, if you want to tell me any. Uh,
Um, Talking about it with others when I feel
yes,
safe was one.
yes, that is a great one. That is perfect. So, oh, while you're thinking about that, and it's okay if you don't want to share them out loud.
Somebody else said 4-7-8 breathing.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So I believe is that where you breathe in for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8? You can let me know if that's not correct. Yes, you guys are really
Yep.
hitting the mark here. Yeah. What else?
Coloring.
Coloring. I love that.
Someone says name 3 things I can see, touch, hear.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing those. I always like to hear other people's ideas because we get used to the ones that we do, and sometimes it's nice to have something new to try. So some additional ones, some you mentioned. The first one is to take a break, an actual break. So if you're feeling a lot of stress, do something different, even for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, can really help you handle that stressor better, give your body a chance to recover and sort of forget about it for a minute. You'll have to come back to it probably. And so filling that space, not with like social media or the news, because probably that's going to add to your stress, but like I said, go for a walk or get out your coloring book or turn on that podcast or audiobook that you like. Or just go stand outside for a second. And similar to what someone said, think about something you can see and touch and feel or hear. So, those little breaks that you can build in are really powerful and needed. Exercise was one that I mentioned. So, exercise helps our bodies to produce endorphins, which are these little feel good chemicals that can help boost our mood. The third one, it sounds overly simplistic, smile and laugh. Well, that's hard to do when you're stressed, right? But you might have to force it. So, if you have a show, like I have a couple shows that I've seen them both like 5 times, but I always laugh, right? So watch that show or pull up a clip of it, and if you know it'll make you laugh, even if it was forced at first, it's still gonna make you feel better. Or call that friend who always makes you laugh, that sort of thing. Stay connected, like, as was mentioned, if you have a safe person or people that you feel like you can share with or talk to and who will listen, that's amazing. That's so important. It could be a friend, family, a therapist. If you don't feel like you have that person right now, journaling is also very effective. Research shows that by journaling, we can really help in those moments of stress because it's sort of a release for our body. We're getting those thoughts and feelings out on paper. And even if you just throw it away right after, it's still helpful. And then the final one that I have here on the screen is practicing mindfulness. And mindfulness is a very intentional habit of living in the present moment. And maybe that sounds silly, but if you think about it, most of our time in our minds, we are not in the present. We are thinking about all the stuff that we have to do later and what things that are coming up and things that we're worried about. Or we are replaying things that happened in the past. Oh, I regret that I did that. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. Oh my goodness, So we're either in the past or the future, and we're not in the present moment. And because of that, we miss out on a lot and we create a lot of extra stress. Like, how many of the things do we worry about actually come true, right? So mindfulness really makes us push ourselves into the present moment, into the here and now. And we can do that in a few ways. So, one way, very similar to what someone had mentioned, you can pull in your five senses, your, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, or feeling. So I could sit here right now and I could say, what do I smell? What can I hear? What do I see? What can I taste? And I really like to do this when I go out for a walk, maybe not on a day like today, but a nice day. Um, and I do that, and it really helps pull me into the moment. Another time that you can do it is when you're eating. So, really concentrating on your food. Not only will that help you be in the moment, but it also might help you hear your body say, "Hey, I'm full now," or "Hey, I'm still hungry." You get more connected to those hunger and fullness cues. And then another one like the 4-7-8 breathing, focusing on your breath, whether that be the 4-7-8 or you're just taking 3 deep breaths in and out. However, you want to do that, those are some ways that you can bring yourself into the moment and help to relieve some of that stress. So now we're going to move on to strategy number 4. Again, like I said, I know this doesn't apply to everyone, but you or someone may fall into this category. And I will say it's probably the most difficult one to change. This is a really, really hard habit to change, and I don't underestimate that by any means. So, the reason why it's so important, we see with smoking and vaping that in the body there's much more inflammation. So we have this increased inflammation. We're seeing that cell damage to vital parts of our bodies, and this can be definitely harmful. Not only that, we also see that illnesses last for longer. It's harder for our bodies to overcome that sickness or that infection. It takes our bodies longer to heal. And then a double-edged sword, not only do we have more inflammation, but we also have less antioxidants circulating in our system. So we're not as it's not as easy for our bodies to heal those cells or to prevent the damage to the cells, and that creates sort of a double-edged sword in that respect. Now, when it comes to quitting, and again, this first one seems like, well, that's great. That's not so helpful. But with any lifestyle habit change, really getting clear about why you want to change and making that, like writing that down and keeping it somewhere you have to see every single day can be helpful. In addition, there's an app called Quit Start that you can look at, or some support phone numbers you can call through the American Cancer Society or the National Cancer Institute. And then another would be to talk to your doctor about a personalized plan. This plan may include things like nicotine replacement therapies or prescription medication. And then finally, we're going to move on to strategy number 5, which is exercising regularly. Exercise definitely strengthens our immune system. How and why this happens aren't totally clear. There's some bodies of thought. So, one is that when you exercise, your body temperature increases. And the thought is that perhaps that higher body temperature kills off some of the pathogens. Another thought process is that we're breathing more when we exercise, right? And so, this extra oxygen and breathing can flush out microbes from our lungs. It could also be because with exercise, we have increased circulation with white blood cells. So those white blood cells are able to move through our system quicker, and that means it can get to those pathogens quicker and kill them sooner. We also do see that our digestion is better when we exercise. So, again, it goes back to that gut health and how that relates to our immunity. And it's a positive thing. And then finally, we see that exercise, again, it's good for our mental health. It helps decrease our stress levels. And therefore, it's improving our immunity in that aspect as well. So exercise, not everybody likes to hear about it or is interested. The goal is to get to 150 minutes of moderate exercise every day. Moderate would be like I could still have a conversation while I'm doing that exercise. Um, if you're not doing any exercise right now, don't try to do 150 the first week. Please work your way up to that. If you need to start with 30 minutes a week and that's more than you were doing, that's a win. So we want to get to about 30 minutes a day, most days of the week, in exercise. The key is to find something you enjoy doing. If you don't enjoy it, you're not going to stick with it. And there's a million ways that you can exercise. Is it pickleball? Is it golfing? Is it walking, water aerobics, strength training? Explore that. Find something that's fun and then start slow, start where you are now and build up gradually. If this is your first week of trying to go exercise, please don't go out and try to run 3 miles. Maybe try to walk for 10 minutes and then you can go from walking to running. It doesn't matter what the buildup is, just do that gradually and really think about when do I have the most energy in a day and the most motivation. For a lot of people, that's first thing in the morning. Okay. I don't know. For me, that's not. I'm more of an afternoon worker outer, but that's because I have 3 kids to get ready in the morning. And by the time that's done, I'm just worn out. So you think about what for you is that best window of time and you're most likely to do it. And then finally, we tend to be more successful with exercise when we do it with friends. Okay, so find a group, an exercise group, or find a friend and make a goal together. You're a lot less likely to back out of it when you have to tell someone, "Hey, I'm not going to work out today." It's one more barrier to quitting on yourself in that sense. So trying to get more exercise is going to be super beneficial in many, many ways. I'm going to go ahead and forward the slide to my contact information. I'm here, Melissa. I'm on the left. These are my colleagues, Elizabeth and Sydney. We are the nutrition specialists for the Kansas City area for MU Extension.
I will send the information on the programs I mentioned at the beginning out with the handouts and the link to the survey in an email following this. But you can also go to mymcpl.org/events to see a complete listing of all the programs, virtual, in-person, hybrid, throughout our 34 branches. All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming. Thank you, Melissa, for
Thank you.
a very informative program. And we hope you'll join us for some future programs. Have a great day, everybody.